Welcome to the Undercovers podcast. I'm Ben, along with Tommy and Paul and Jenna. Unfortunately, couldn't make it tonight, but tonight we have a very fun episode. So we're deep into this NFL training camp, preseason, whatever. We got 3 weeks until week 1 against the Jets, 21 days. We're definitely going to dive deep into that. But we have actual real football that matters this week in the NCAA. I know a lot of our followers and viewers are Bills fans, but all of us are hardcore college football fans as well. And part of this show, principles and foundings was to also talk about, XFL, USFL, as well as college football on top of the Bills and the NFL. So as college football starts tonight, we wanted to dive into it, give our predictions, previews, everything. So guys, how are we all feeling about college football being back this weekend?
Oh man, it's been a long wait. I mean, the championship game was a dud, but it's after the championship game you just start feeling like, man, I have nothing to do on Saturdays anymore. You get off work or you don't have work. I normally just you wake up 9 a.m. and you turn the TV on College Game Day on Saturday, or if you watch Fox version of College Game Day. I don't really care for Fox version, but College Game Day is the go-to, and then you get ready for some of these noon games, and here we are. It's back. We get it. We get it this weekend. It's not going to be the prettiest action this weekend. It's week 0. You get some of these meh type games, but it's back, and I'm happy for it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm excited. I always like to turn on College Game Day in the mornings, during the college season, and get pumped up for the big games. So I'm glad it's back. Let's go.
College Game Day is the best, Tommy.
Yeah, it
now
is.
With Pat McAfee on it.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, when you get McAfee going,
and Lee Corso's still the best. I don't think so. He puts on the mascot head when he does the prediction. It's the best, really.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty cool. Yeah, he does it really good.
I mean, there's nothing like a crisp fall day. When the leaves start to change, and then college football on in the morning, and just all day long. You really can't beat it. So we're doing playoff predictions. So guys, we'll get to that later, but early on, this weekend we got Notre Dame playing, and Sam Hartman comes in from Wake Forest after having a very impressive career there. And to me, that might be one of the most underrated pickups in the transfer portal. And the way that that Notre Dame finished the end of their season last year, I was just really impressed with them. And then to get a veteran quarterback like them in Hartman, who's proven. I really like what Marcus Freeman did in his first year as coach at Notre Dame, and I like what he's building. And I'm kind of high on Notre Dame. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I think Notre Dame they're in for a good year. I think. What do you guys think? Maybe a 10, 11 win team, maybe possibly.
You look at their schedule. You go through their schedule. I mean, they have. You look at some of these games. They got USC on their schedule. They also have Notre Dame on their schedule. I think they also have Wisconsin on their schedule.
They play Ohio State. That's going to be a big test early on.
Yeah.
To be honest, they play Clemson as well. I mean,
yeah.
So if they're a playoff team, I mean, they'll prove it. Because I mean, I know every game is technically non-conference for them. I mean, they don't really get tested early on until they play NC State week 3, but then 2 weeks later they host Ohio State. But last year their defense played Ohio State very well, and I thought they had a chance to win it up until the very end when Ohio State pulled away. I think CJ Stroud had a late touchdown pass, but other than that, I mean, they stayed in that game most of the game, and that was with quarterback issues. And now they have a new quarterback, and on the flip side, Ohio State, they're gonna have a first time starter after CJ Stroud, who was so good for them for so many years, has gone to the NFL. So there might be. I mean, that might actually be an advantage to Notre Dame, being that they're at
Also,
home. They have the
yeah.
veteran quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be a fun game to really get into. Like you look at Notre Dame and what what you just said, what they've been building. Maybe for some last year was in Notre Dame football categories, and it's like maybe wasn't the best year according to Notre Dame, but to us it was a building point where they can go off, and we'll maybe get into a conference realignment in a minute, but like this year could be a big year for Notre Dame football. Like if they would have to choose a conference to go into, so like getting a guy like a Sam Hartman who's been playing in college like for like forever now. I think he's like this is his 6th year. I think he played 5 year. I think at Wake 6 year. So he's coming into his 6th year in college and an impressive career, setting Wake Forest records. Notre Dame is going to be a tough team to beat week in and week out. Their defense, like you said, Ben, like went into Ohio State last year and nearly beat Ohio State.
Right.
So now you flip it over, they're going to get Ohio State in their house with their fans with Sam Hartman. I think that could be an interesting week 4 upset, because even though Notre Dame hosts Ohio State, I would feel they would be 14-point favorites in that game.
And they know how to groom their tight ends too, don't they, at Notre Dame? Like,
They've had so many good tight ends. Michael Mayer.
Like that's like a quarterback's best friend. So I think that'll be good for them in a way. They just groom the tight end, and that's how their offense.
Yeah, 100%. Right. I mean, Tyler Eifert was good. I mean, Kyle Rudolph played there as well, right?
Yeah. Yep. So, maybe they can groom in their new. They have a new tight end, right?
This year, I think. This year they're coming with the new tight end because Michael Mayer decided to go to the NFL.
No,
but I mean, you look. I guess that's where the issue you might run in, even though you have a guy like a Sam Hartman. It's like, who's he going to throw to?
Right.
But I think a guy like a Sam Hartman will find ways to find those guys to throw to.
I mean, like, Notre Dame has always had good receiving talent too there. Like Michael Floyd was great at Notre Dame. Golden Tate. Will Fuller was the truth at Notre Dame. He was so good. And of course, Jeff Samardzija, he was an All-American, but ended up becoming a pitcher. So, I mean, Notre Dame has been good at developing receiving talent, getting receiving talent. Same thing with the tight ends, Tommy. I mean, good point. Same with interior offensive line, right? Zach Martin, Quentin Nelson. I mean, they put out some really good quality talent at those positions. That's important for a quarterback, and to come in and have an experienced veteran quarterback to, pair with a good match with a good defense that, Marcus Freeman's going to be, coming from that side of the ball, being the former defensive coordinator. They're going to be a strong defensive team. They just need kind of like, equivalent to what the Jets are doing with Rodgers coming in, right? They just needed a veteran to be able to, win games for them, because they're going to have a great defense, and that's what they're going to be, built around. So I think Notre Dame, I think they're going to have a very strong season. I mean, I don't know if they'll end up. I mean, let's be honest. They play Clemson. I think Clemson is winnable for them because they beat Clemson last year, if I'm not mistaken. And then I actually kind of like them. I like the matchup against Ohio State. They have some other tough games. Games USC. In there being USC, of course. I don't know if I like them versus USC, but even if they lose 1 or 2 games, that's still a good season. I don't know. You kind of have to go perfect probably if you're Notre Dame, or at least maybe have 1 loss to make the playoffs without having that conference championship game. And that's something we'll get into later, is all these conference realignments in championship games, how important they'll be, or if we should really have them. But back to Notre Dame, I like what Notre Dame is developing. On the flip side, though, their former coach, he had a pretty good first season at LSU. They beat Alabama. They went on a little run after starting off slow. And Jaden Daniels, I know they got spanked by Georgia in the SEC championship game,
They
but I mean,
did.
Georgia did that to TCU. I mean, they just did that to every team, quite frankly, including Tennessee. They were just so good last year.
Yeah.
But they lost a lot of talent to the NFL, though, in terms of guys like Darnell Washington, Broderick Jones. They lost who's their running back this year again? It's slipping my mind. He got drafted to the NFL as well.
Yeah.
They lost that safe. They lost one of their safeties. They lost their corner. They lost their Jalen Carter, of course. They lost Nolan Smith. So I mean, Georgia lost a lot.
Ben,
And of course, the legend Stetson Bennett. What's up?
they got my favorite tight end on Georgia.
I know they do.
You know
So they'll always
Howard.
have talent, but they're going to look a little different with a,
yeah.
different quarterback under center. LSU though has the same quarterback. Does you guys think LSU has any shot to win the SEC? Because I see a lot of people talking about it.
I think they have a real legit chance. Like, they always have a top tier defense in the league, and like they've always come out strong. So like I think they have a legit chance to make.
Do you believe in Brian Kelly though? That's what it really comes down to.
Yeah, I mean,
they beat Bama last year.
Yeah, it beat Bama, but yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to. I want to say I'm going to believe in him this year. I think he gets it done this year. I think they get in the playoff. That's
wow.
I'll say
LSU to the playoff with Brian Kelly. I like it. That's a hot take. They'll be tested out week 1 when they play Florida State, who's another top 10 team. That should be a great matchup. And I guess let's move to the ACC now. Okay. Florida State looks loaded.
Yep.
But then you got Drake May, who looks like one of the best quarterbacks, coming into the draft next season. Clemson will always be Clemson, but they have a new quarterback under center as well. Will Shipley, though, and they always have a great defense. So what are your thoughts on this ACC? I mean, does the ACC put out a playoff team? Because it's been so long since an ACC team has made it into the picture. Since really Trevor Lawrence was there, right?
I actually I do it. I'm not going to reveal it, but I have an ACC team making it to the playoff.
Same. I think the ACC is one of those, because of all the conference realignment. We'll get into that later. They're kind of like that underdog type of conference that's just sitting there. They have 3-4 solid good teams in that conference, but no one's talking about them, right? I mean, no one's really talking about Florida State. Like, even though they're in the top 10, no one's really talking about them. They're just sitting there. I mean, you're talking about also a Clemson who's just sitting there, who's also been good. But
you always have to respect Dabo Swinney, right?
Yeah, you do.
I mean, he could easily, if he wanted to be an NFL coach, he could, walk in today and say, "Hey, I want to go to the NFL," and the players respect him so much and everything. He could get an NFL head coaching job like that, but the fact is he likes it in college, whatever. I think obviously that he makes more money in college, but you always gotta respect a Dabo Swinney coach team, and they got some great coaches on that team, right? CJ Spiller, a running backs coach.
Yep. Another team in the ACC. Don't sleep on North Carolina. I think
don't. Mac Brown,
good run.
I mean,
another team in the ACC.
Mac Brown always is in the picture, it seems like.
Yeah.
And he always finds a quality quarterback. Like, they've gone from Trubisky to Howell, and now it looks like they got the best quarterback they've ever had in Drake May. And I'm buying the Drake May hype personally. I thought last year he could have easily won the Heisman if he played a little bit better at the end of the season. Granted, he was a freshman versus Caleb Williams being a sophomore, and that was his second year in the Lincoln Riley offense, as well as, I mean, they got the Biletnikoff winner transferring to them in terms of Jordan Addison. Caleb Williams had Jordan Addison to throw to. He also had, I think their other receiver's name is Mario Williams, ironically, but I mean, there's other talented players at receiver for USC. And that offense is always so dominant by by Lincoln Riley. But on the other hand, I know Downs was there at Carolina,
Mhm.
but outside of that, I feel like he was able to just make it work with other guys. Like, and he had something like 4 interceptions at one point. So his interception rate is really good for a college quarterback.
They've always known to groom talent there in North Carolina. So like
They do. And Duke is another team that seems. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Tommy.
I said I respect them more as their football team than the basketball. I like their football team more than their basketball team. I like the football better.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with you there. But I like them. I still like. I think I like UNC more than Duke.
Oh, definitely.
So yeah,
I would agree.
yeah.
I would agree.
But actually, on the flip side, I don't mind Duke football as much. And switching narratives, or switching gears, from Carolina to Duke.
Yeah.
Duke football is actually on the rise. Like they're starting to put NFL
last year.
Yeah, they're starting to put NFL talent in.
It's true.
I mean, look at Daniel Jones out there.
Yeah.
Right?
Notably.
Yeah, I mean he's giving it a go. I mean,
I mean, Duke last year they still went 9-4.
Yeah.
That's very underrated. When you think Duke football, you don't really think 9 wins or something like that. Kind of like Kentucky. Like even Kansas last year had a solid year. A lot of these blue bloods and basketball teams like are so bad in football, but I feel like that's starting to change. Like you're right, Carolina is starting to get really good. They're never really that good in football. Neither is Duke. Duke is getting better. Kentucky put out Will Levis at quarterback.
Yep.
They got some other guys coming in. And I know they're not maybe there to win the SEC, but they'll be in the top 25, and
yeah,
they'll be a tough team to play for most of those SEC teams, and they'll win a bowl game.
Right.
So I mean, it feels like it's kind of funny how all these like basketball schools are starting to get better in college football, but even Syracuse, right? They're having a better. They had a better season to start out last year, but I'll be honest, I'm still not as high on Syracuse as some people, except I love Syracuse's tight end, wide receiver, whatever you call him. I think he just says he's a playmaker.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, Oronde Gadsden II. I don't know if you've seen his highlights, Tommy. He's 6'4". If you watch Syracuse football this year, watch out for Oronde Gadsden because
I watched some.
He
Syracuse
is a
football last
playmaker.
year.
He had the game-winning touchdown versus Purdue last year when Syracuse played Purdue. I don't know if you saw that game.
Is he a senior, Ben, or a junior?
Yeah, I know he's gonna come out in the draft. I think he might be. It might be a junior actually, but
he's coming out.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, I mean, he's technically, I don't know, tight end receiver, but I mean, he's a weapon and he'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, definitely. I have to check him out.
Yeah, that'll be a reason to watch Syracuse football. I mean, you guys are right. I think the ACC is a little underrated. My hot take, and I know it may not be factually supported recently, but I think the outside of like your Michigan, Penn State kind of, Ohio State for sure, but outside of those teams, I think the Big Ten is like the most overrated conference ever because teams like Iowa, they struggle to score a touchdown against South Dakota State. You got teams like Rutgers that are very weak. Maryland has gotten better with Tua's brother. They put out Deonte Banks and some other talent, but I just don't like. Even Michigan State recently has been very, very weak. And then you got Nebraska there too. Minnesota, like they've been all right.
And then the controversy with Northwestern, right?
Yeah, well, Northwestern's another team, right? But they're a punching bag for those Big Ten teams, right?
Yeah.
Like, I just feel like it's so easy to stack up wins and stats. And I know it's supposed to be a defensive conference, but I don't think most of those teams are really have a lot of offensive firepower outside of like your Michigans, your Penn State, your Ohio State. And I think that's why it looks so defensive. I mean, there's some defensive talent there, but
it's bleak. It's bleak.
yeah, I mean, TCU, I mean, they marched right down the field versus Michigan.
They did.
Michigan's defense did not give them any issue. But then you had Georgia, and we all know that the SEC is the best. I mean, that's really not a debate. It's the closest league outside of the NFL to the NFL in terms of talent and level of competition. And that's why, even as a non-SEC fan, the SEC is my favorite conference to watch.
Yeah.
Just because of how great the games are. Like, I can just admit as a football fan that that's like the top level outside of the NFL. And to some degree, SEC football is better than some NFL games. I know some people I've heard some people make takes about preseason games are better than college football, which is not true at all. But I mean, last year's Bama versus
just
Tennessee,
about to point
that's better than probably 75% of regular NFL games you're going to see.
Look,
I mean, there's some great playoff games, some great regular season games, like that Bills-Vikings game, which I know sucked for Bills fans, whatever. But your average NFL game is not giving you all the hype, emotion, fans, everything, the players, the excitement. Like, it is something else, SEC football.
Yeah, I agree.
Not getting an Alabama versus Tennessee come down to a wobbly field goal finish that just barely crossed, that just barely got over the crossbar. And
Georgia
then everyone stormed
beat up Bama though, right? Or sorry, TCU, right? I mean, but Georgia they beat up TCU like they were a JV team. So I think the Big Ten is kind of weak. I mean, let's go to the last Big Ten national championship game appearance, right?
Yeah.
What happened? Justin Fields played. All those guys played. Olave, right? Garrett Wilson, JSN. I mean, they only played 5 games, so they didn't even play as much as the Bama players. So they should have been more rested. They got shredded by Milk Bag Jones, whatever, Mac Jones, your McCorkle, your nicknames. I mean, Mac Jones tore them apart. Good enough to get a first-round draft pick. So I'm not as big of a Big Ten guy. I know we'll talk about this conference realignment later, and it's going to look interesting once these conferences, officially realign.
Oh yeah.
Because we got the last year of Texas and Oklahoma playing in the Big 12, which is kind of, I mean, these names definitely don't fit because once these conferences change, the Big 10 is going to have 20 teams and the Big 12 is going to have 18, I think, or it's the other way around, one or the other. But I mean, the conference names don't even match, how many teams are in there anymore. So it's mad confusing. But anyways, Texas will be in the Big 12 for the final time this year. But we also have Cincinnati, UCF, BYU, and Houston all joining the Big 12. Oh, that was the other team that I forgot. Houston, as far as, the basketball. I know we were talking about that earlier before the show, but I mean, once the Big 12 realignment for basketball, it's going to be even more insane than it is for football. But I mean, this is going to be the last year we see Texas in the Big 12. Do you guys think their farewell tour ends with them lifting the trophy in Cowboy Stadium?
I think they could. I mean, it's a big possibility. I mean, they have they have a good quarterback, Quinn Ewers.
Yeah.
And then they have, I forget the receiver's name, but the one
Xavier Worthy.
They have like one of the best wide receivers in this class this year. And their offense is just loaded with talent. I mean, and then you just flip the ball to the other side. It's their defense is also stacked. Then I think their only weakness is it comes down to the head coach. Can the head coach actually coach?
Do you believe in Steve Sarkisian? That's kind of, I guess, a similar question with LSU.
Right. It's like it comes down. Do you believe in the head coach in Sarkisian? I think they do win. I think at the end of the day, I think they do win the Big 12.
I think so
And
too.
I'm not going to spoil my top four who gets into the playoffs, but Texas has a real shot ending their Big 12 farewell tour in winning the Big 12 championship and have a chance to maybe even lift the national championship trophy before
I got
leaving the Big 12.
I got them winning the Big 12 too. I think they go
Now,
with a high to leave the Big 12 to go this. I think they go out on a high.
that would be something though, lifting the actual trophy. But I like this Texas team too. I mean, looking at the rest of the landscape of the conference, Deuce Vaughn is no longer at Kansas State. He gave them so many problems. Don't believe in OK State as well. Oklahoma, I don't believe in that coach Venables. Like but I don't know. Dylan Gabriel there.
Oklahoma's a weird team this year.
Oh, I don't know. Dylan Gabriel, there's always something with Dylan Gabriel. And he played us actually relatively tough in that Cheez-It Bowl. I mean, granted, it was for nothing. But I kind of like Dylan Gabriel.
I do.
He's got this moxie. He's got this moxie about him, and he's good. I mean, I like Ewers too, but I don't know. I mean, but I still don't trust Venables, but I don't know how much I trust Sarkisian either. But then we got TCU, and I know they lost their quarterback. They lost their first round wide receiver, their second receiver, Kendre Miller as well. They lost Steve Avila. They lost a lot of talent to the NFL as well as, Tomlinson, their corner. But there's something about Sonny Dykes. No one picked them to win that Big 12 last year. And he just inspired that whole team. They won some really gutsy games. They just found it was never pretty. Even versus Michigan, they barely won that game. But I don't know. There's something about this TCU team that just feels special. Like, I don't know if they'll be able to replicate it, but I think they'll still be a tough team. And flip side, Kansas State won the Big 12 championship last year, so I don't think you can just write off Kansas State. But I do like Texas more than those other teams. But I mean, now that you add even BYU and let's see how Cincinnati matches up versus other Power 5 teams now, because they're officially a Power 5 team. Same with UCF. The former, what was it, 2018 official national champions. When they went undefeated, whatever year they went undefeated. I think it was 2017. I think, right?
I think it was 2017 because
2017 because
was still their quarterback.
The 2018 season ended when they lost to LSU because they picked off Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow ended up coming back and winning, and then he didn't lose a single college game after that.
Right.
But we'll see if UCF is really what they're made of. I mean, they've put some decent NFL talent on the board, right? Gabe Davis has been pretty good for the Bills. Latavius Murray also has had a pretty good NFL career. I mean, Prasad Perriman, he never was elite coming out of there, but he's still in the league how many years after?
Yeah.
Sorry, Paul.
Some of these teams that are coming into this year, you get
Houston has been good, right?
Yeah, Houston's been
they all been good, but I think they're coming from a Group of 5 conference, into a Power 5 conference. I think they're going to struggle a little bit. I mean, I don't think all of them are going to have like a sub 500 schedule, a sub 500 record. But I would expect some of them to be around 8-4, something like that. Just kind of riding the waters just a little bit so they can get used to Big 12 football feel. And then the following year, in 2024, when they played a year in, Big 12 football, they'll feel more comfortable and maybe running something different, try to go win a Big 12 championship. So I think this year for some of these teams is, ride the waters just a little bit, try to survive, but also try not to try to embarrass the Big 12, and
Right.
then go forward as Texas and Oklahoma leaves, and like make it like this is why Texas and Oklahoma is leaving, because we got these people coming into our conference. So that's where I'm at with some of these new teams coming in, riding the waters a bit. Kind of, I think they're going to give, I think BYU is going to cause some trouble in the Big 12 this year. I really do think that BYU, will cause, like a TCU,
They
or
beat
Kansas State,
Baylor last year, right?
They did.
Yeah, they did.
I think they also played Arkansas close last year. So, I mean, BYU is that interesting team that, if you want to talk, maybe like a TCU like team last year in the Big 12,
Mhm.
that BYU team could definitely be that team that's just hitting there and just waiting for a couple big wins, and then off they go.
Yeah, and I think to just kind of add on, once these teams are in the Big 12 for a couple years, that's also going to help with their recruitment a lot, because now they're an official Power 5. You get all that extra money, extra for the NIL too, but everything, the more coverage, like you get the better recruits to the bigger schools and the bigger conferences. So this is going to help teams recruiting, but the recruiting cycle might take a couple of years, but the Pac-12 it's almost gone, right? Basically, there's like 2 teams left. I think it's just going to officially collapse, right?
Yeah, it's not going to be a
Yeah,
conference.
they're
I
not a
mean, who's
Pac-4.
left? It's got Oregon State,
Cal, Stanford,
State, and Washington State.
Yeah, that's
So
the
it's the
4 remaining teams.
Pac-4.
The Pac-4 after this year.
Yeah, but they're not going to exist as a 4-team conference. What are they going to do? Just play each other like 3 times?
Are they trying to get some Mountain West teams to go over there, Ben?
It's the thing with the
But,
Mountain
like-
West teams, they have a huge buyout in their TV contracts in the
Oh,
Mountain West.
I mean, but all those teams do, I guess. But say you give them who? San Diego State, maybe they're kind of a legit team. Fresno State, Boise State.
Yeah.
SMU has been rumored to get to the Big 12. I mean, sorry, to the Pac, to the new Pac. I mean,
SMU?
Tulane's
Interesting.
Yeah, that is.
Tulane's also been rumored there. East Carolina's also been rumored there.
Okay.
East Carolina to the
Yeah.
Pacific Athletic Conference.
Yeah, there's been some interesting rumors.
I saw
I've
also Stanford to the ACC, which is even, I guess that's just as ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think Stanford becomes independent.
I mean, these travel arrangements are just gonna be so weird, like especially for all these other sports. Like you got Washington
Rutgers
having
and
to go to
UCLA.
Rutgers, right? To LA. I mean, I guess then you look at the the Big 12. You got a team like let's see,
the travel in the Big 12 is not that bad as like the travel in the Big 10.
I mean, it's not as bad, but you got like UCF having to go to
Oh yeah,
having to go to like
Colorado or
Arizona
Arizona
State,
State,
or Utah. Like, I mean, that's like on the complete opposite end of the country. I mean, Cincinnati, I don't think is that close to those teams either. I mean, I just feel like there's just gonna be a lot of travel. I mean, like
Definitely, it's gonna be weird.
Like I'm excited for the SEC specifically because I mean, if we can pull up that SEC schedule to look at next year's SEC schedule, once Oklahoma and Texas join, because I'm so stoked for that, because we're gonna get some classic matchups we have not seen in a while, like Texas A&M. Though they're historic rivals, Texas fans do not like Texas A&M at all,
they
and
do not.
vice versa. Like my old manager was a Texas fan, and he explained the whole story of everything, A&M, Oklahoma, everything, and their 2 biggest rivals, it's A&M and Oklahoma, and they're going to be playing Oklahoma again, and Oklahoma is going to be playing A&M again, and Texas will also get to play Alabama and Georgia, and Texas LSU, I believe, was former. I think Texas LSU was, but I know Texas Arkansas had been a rivalry in the past too. So I mean, there's just going to be all these classic rivalries that we haven't seen in a while in matchups, and I think it's gonna be pretty epic, but I don't know. Like, how is a team like Vanderbilt? I mean, I'm not gonna trash South Carolina just because South Carolina they've been on the up and come under Shane Beamer. I like what he's been doing.
Mhm.
They dominated Tennessee last year, so they're no longer the punching bag. But like a team like Missouri and Vanderbilt, I don't know how
I
they're
can
going to
pull it up.
survive in
I
these
found something for it.
conferences. Like, honestly, if we're talking about, they should just do like relegation systems, just like relegate Mizzou and Vanderbilt to like the, I don't know, the Sun Belt Conference, and then the winner of the Pac-12 gets to play in the SEC, and then the lowest team moves. I don't know. I mean, obviously that won't work, but all right. So
Ben, can you zoom or can y'all zoom that in a little bit?
Alrighty. Is that good now? Better?
Yeah, it's a little. Oh, there we go. Okay,
All right, that's better.
yeah, that's
all right.
better. Thank you.
So, Paul, I know you made a list. What are your top 10 matchups from the new SEC schedule? Because one thing I like to point out, we no longer will have divisions, so they're just kind of rotating games. I guess kind of how the NFL does as far as who they're playing.
Yeah.
These top 10 2024 SEC games also include some of their non-conference schedule games, because you also look at the non-conference schedule, because right here is just what they play against each other, but some of these teams have released who they're
Let's
playing
just
in their
focus on
non-conference.
the conference right now.
Alrighty.
Let's go what you got in the conference, and then if we don't have 10 from that, we'll just go off this list. So just give us what you got so far.
All right, so my top conference game that I think
Do you want to
is
do it
going
in reverse order or top?
Let
Or
me
no, we
count
can just
how
do
many.
top. Yeah, just go for top. We'll do that. Number one. What's the number one SEC game?
All right, my top SEC game that I have entering for 2024 is going to be Texas at Texas A&M. This is the rivalry's back. I mean, you get Texas A&M for the first time since 2011.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these
That's been a
fans have
while.
waited almost 12, almost 13 years going on without having to face really their arch rival. I mean, yeah, Texas and Oklahoma, in the Red River Showdown's awesome. But, the last few years, it's just been Texas destroying the heck out of Oklahoma. So who wants to watch that? So Texas A&M, the recruiting for both schools are great. You get two great coaches. You get some great quarterbacks against each other. Texas A&M, and especially Texas have to go into Texas A&M.
Ooh.
That's going to be fun because Texas A&M atmosphere, I would assume this would be a night game, is going to be electric. My next game that I have on this list is Texas versus Georgia. I think this game will be awesome to watch. I mean, again, I have a Texas feel to this top few games, here. But like Texas and Georgia, you never see these two teams. I mean, face each other against each other. I mean, maybe this year we get a preview of what it will look like next year. It just depends how this year goes. But I mean, Texas, Georgia. I mean, Texas will play home to Georgia. So that's going to be a fun game to watch. I would expect it. I mean, television networks would be wanting maybe to put that in the noon hour. So that could be a fun noon game to watch.
Yeah.
Right. No, I mean, I agree. It seems like we got a Texas theme, but I mean, new team on the block. I mean, it's gonna be exciting to see how Texas matches up versus these SEC teams. Who's number 3?
3 on the list. On my there's not going to be 10 games here because like I said, it includes their non-conference, but I'll go to my next SEC game on the list, which would be 4 on the top 10. It's Alabama versus Georgia. This is the first time we will see Alabama versus Georgia in the regular season. Normally we see Alabama versus Georgia in the playoffs or in the SEC championship game, or
Yeah.
even or just in the national championship game. This is the first time Georgia would have to pack their bags and head to Alabama. That's going to be fun to watch,
Yeah.
and that could honestly determine who might get to the SEC championship game at the end of the year.
So that's number 3, correct? What do we got at 4?
At 4, I got Arkansas and Texas. Again, back to the theme of rivalry games. This is an old rivalry that just after Texas, and Arkansas, moved conferences, it's just been non-existent. I mean, Arkansas
I
and
believe it was
Texas.
the Southwestern Conference that they're originally in together,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, they were originally in, I think, in that Southwestern Conference. So I mean, that conference had just broken down. I think Texas went to the Big 12, and then Arkansas went to the SEC. So
Yeah.
so this is an old rivalry that's coming back. It's going to be electric. I like it. I mean, Texas will have to go into Arkansas. Going into Arkansas is always a tough place to play.
Yep.
So that's 4 on this list. 5 will be LSU, Oklahoma. Oklahoma will have to go into LSU.
Yeah.
Oklahoma could have a good year this year, but next year they have to go to Ole Miss. They will have to go to LSU, Auburn, and they will also have to face Tennessee and Alabama both at home. So you think if you're predicting Oklahoma can have a 10-win season this year, next year they might only be an 8-win team.
8-win team, yeah.
Because of all
Maybe
the
even
people.
less.
Yeah, maybe like a 7-6.
Maybe
So is
6.
Oklahoma LSU at 5?
Yeah.
And then who you got at 6?
Oklahoma versus Texas. This
All
might
right.
not be.
Versus Texas.
This might not
That's
be
still a
like
sexy matchup. I mean, I know it's not a historical SEC matchup, but it's Oklahoma, Texas. Like it's really
Right.
no explanation needed for the
Yeah.
Red River Showdown.
Exactly.
Yep.
I mean, the thing is with these conference realignments is that
I like it that they're
going
keeping
to
some of
start.
these classic rivalries, though.
Right.
Like Texas and Oklahoma, they need to play each other, but also like how they're restoring some of these classic rivalries
Right.
that we haven't seen in a little bit, like the Texas A&M, Texas, the Arkansas, Texas. So I like that's the one thing I'm loving about this realignment.
It's bringing back some classic matchups, Ben.
Really,
100%, Tommy.
Oh, you gotta love it.
Oh yeah. What's our next team? What's our next matchup on that list, Paul?
The next matchup on this list would be the final conference head-to-head on this list on the top 25, the top 10 that I made earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma versus Alabama. This could be just an Alabama team that will walk into Norman and just blow them by 50 points. But you also are going into Norman, and playing Oklahoma at home is a different type of atmosphere than Alabama having to go to Rocky Top. This is a different level. I mean, you're coming from Oklahoma and Texas, who are coming from Big 12 football, which you might not think Big 12 football isn't any good, but they love their football in the Big 12. These fan bases have really grown into the roots of good time football. So Oklahoma could give Alabama a run for their money at home, and that really would conclude like the list of. Oh, there's actually one more on this list of conference versus conference game. Is the next one on this list would be Florida, Georgia. I just on that same theme of keeping the old rivalries. I mean, Florida, Georgia, it's been Georgia controlling it, but like if Florida can really get back into the roots this year, I think that could be a fun game to watch.
So that's one thing.
Yeah.
Back to that
That would be it.
Oklahoma Alabama game. Last time we saw those teams play each other, Alabama actually got smoked. In that Sugar Bowl. I know you also had LSU Texas. Or sorry, I mean, so yeah, you had LSU Texas, but you also had Georgia Texas as well, and Georgia
It was
lost.
LSU Oklahoma.
Yes, sorry, yes, I know, but you had Georgia and Texas, right?
Yes.
I mean, they played each other not too long ago, in 2019, right? In the Orange Bowl, and
Yep.
and Texas ended up taking down Georgia. So I mean, we're getting some recent bowl game rematches next season, but I mean, we got, if we were to give maybe two more just to round out top 10, my pick is going to be LSU Bama. I think that's always going to be a classic SEC matchup. I know it's something we see every year, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes, the old ones are the best. So I'm looking forward to seeing LSU go head to head versus Bama again. Tommy, you got another, to finish out our top 10?
I'm looking at LSU Florida. I always like that.
Yeah, I like that matchup too.
I think that's going to be an interesting game. I think that's
They've had some really good battles.
yeah, they always have good battles, LSU and Florida. So that's another game I'm looking forward to round out the top 10.
And just to wrap up the realignments, I'm loving this realignment, but we see what the we see what the Big Ten is doing, bringing in those West Coast teams, which is ultimately dismantled the Pac-12. No more Pac-12 after dark, unless it's like, I guess Mountain West / Pac-12 combo. I don't know what they're gonna do, but a lot of classic rivalries are gonna go away, right? Like,
yeah.
Utah and USC, right? That's it's not a classic rivalry, but that's kind of been those recent Utah USC games. They played in the Pac-12 championship. They played last year when Dalton Kincaid, of course, went off and basically single-handedly beat USC. But there's going to be a lot of games that we're not going to see anymore from that conference. UCLA, USC stay together. Same with Washington and Oregon, and that's good. But like, Washington's not going to be playing the Utahs anymore, or the Arizona States. I mean, Arizona Arizona State and USC have had some pretty good battles. Stanford has had some good games as well. We're not going to see Stanford Oregon anymore, or Stanford USC.
No,
like,
you're not going to.
Ironically,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying ironically, one of those Pac-12 games I remember the best came when Matt Barkley was playing Andrew Luck. I don't know if you remember that game, Tommy, but that was a crazy game. I think Barkley ended up outdueling Andrew Luck that game.
Yeah,
and it's funny. After that game, I was so sold on Matt Barkley being the next thing, and there's not been a good USC quarterback. I believe Caleb Williams will change that trend, but I mean, Carson Palmer was actually pretty good, to give him credit. Sanchez not so much, but
no.
Matt Leinart not so much, but I mean, the Cody Kessler not so much. I mean, but he really wasn't drafted high. But I was convinced in that game that Matt Barkley was going to be good in the NFL, and they came in ranked number 1, and they had Robert Woods, Marquise Lee, and they ended up like finishing the season unranked, and he ended up falling to the 4th round. But how crazy was it for Matt Barkley? But just back to these, classic Pac-12 games, Oregon and Stanford. We won't see that anymore. I don't even know what Stanford's going to happen or what's going to happen with Stanford. And then the same thing. I mean, I don't think Texas and Oklahoma are really losing as much with their rivalries. Maybe OK State or Texas Tech, Baylor, TCU, not like long established rivalries for Texas or Oklahoma, but it's just going to look weird. And then, Utah is coming into the Big 12. Like, I'm not really a fan of all this realignment that's going on. I don't know about you guys.
I mean, one reason why I guess I'm not a fan of realignment is because you're getting rid of some of these old rivalries.
Mhm.
Back to you can just back to the SEC for just a second. I mean, we're getting Texas A&M for the first time since 2011. I mean, you even go back to last year when Pittsburgh and West Virginia played. That was the first time they played, I believe, in almost, I think it's like 20 years or something like that. Don't quote me on that. But it was a while since Pittsburgh and West Virginia played before they went their separate ways. What you're going to miss in the Pac-12, I mean, we talked about some of these rivalries, but I think the one rivalry we forgot is Oregon State. In-state rivalries matter.
Yeah.
I mean, these rivalries, they may not, it might not be well, it's not like a big rivalry. It's Pac-12 after dark. It's a 10 o'clock game. But, it's 10 o'clock there, but it's still 7 p.m., and those people are ready to go. I mean, Oregon wants to
Or what about the Apple Cup?
Yeah.
What about the Apple Cup? I mean, isn't that called the Civil War between Oregon State or something like that?
Oh yeah, that's gonna be another one, man. Like
Washington State for the Apple Cup is just no more.
It's crazy.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, but then you got the 12-team college playoff, expanded playoffs. I mean, I know I like what they're doing by getting rid of the divisions because I think if you got like a really bad division like we saw with like the SEC East, or I think that's what they called it. Like, I know they would have your Georgias or whatever, but outside of Georgia, it would just be like Missouri, Tennessee was down, or South Carolina wasn't very good. Vanderbilt was in that as well. Kentucky. Like, I mean, it's just easy to those teams to stack up wins versus the other time at a point you had Alabama and LSU at their peak. Auburn was always consistently good. Ole Miss has had some good teams. Arkansas is usually tough. And then you had Mississippi State even was number one at one point when they had Dak as quarterback. I believe Chris Jones was also on the team at that time, which was one of the reasons why they're so good. But I like it that they're getting that the conferences have got rid of the divisions, and I think the Big Ten is going to have a divisionless conference as well. And the ACC has done it, so I don't know. I guess you'll just have to have there's really just going to be 4 big conferences left, and you'll have 4 automatic qualifiers, and then maybe 8 at-large bids or something like that for the playoffs. Is that how you think it should work?
I think that's what they're doing. I think it's the 4 top conference winners go, and then they do
8 at large.
I think they do a couple at large, and then I think a couple of seats are based off where you ended up in the standings. I got to go back to it. But one quick point about the conference realignment before we kind of switch off for a minute is that you could really say the premise of the 12-team playoff was to try to get more of these other schools into the playoff, right?
That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Or a group of 5 teams.
Like your UCFs or Cincy's, right? When they were still, group 5.
Have a chance. And they didn't have
or even the Pac-12, really, because the Pac-12 had a hard time getting in. Right. And now the Pac-12 is now the Pac-4.
I think the Pac-12 has only ever gotten 1 team into the playoff, right?
Yeah,
that was Oregon. Oregon the first year. Okay, you're right. Sorry, I forgot about Washington. So 2, but Washington. Well, that's when Jake Browning was there, and they got smoked. I mean, it's been a while since we've seen USC was close, but they couldn't close it out last year. I mean,
Right.
if they beat Utah and won the Pac-12, they probably get in over Ohio State.
I would agree.
And they would have gotten smoked by Georgia. They would have gotten smoked. I mean, I love Caleb Williams, but he would have left that game just like he did that Pac-12 game, because Georgia's defense would have beat him up like they did to Max
Georgia's
Duggan.
defense was an NFL defense last year.
Yep.
But just to me, this may seem harsh, but I honestly feel like these athletic directors, these people that run these schools and want to change conferences, forget about these rivalries, and they're taking the media right deals too far. They're in for the money instead of keeping the old tradition of college football.
You're right. There's a lot of traditions are gonna go away. I think at a certain point, it's going to be too much like the NFL. Why not just get rid of conferences, right? Like, I don't know, like just everyone play a non-conference schedule, mixed up the games or whatever, and then you'll just go off of wins or losses or rankings or something like that. I don't know. It just feels like it's almost going to be worthless if there's going to be all these teams, making the playoffs. Anyways, the regular season is not going to be as important. That's the one thing that made college football so great back in, the bowl championship series era. If you lost a regular season game, like that was pretty much the end of your season. Like there are some teams that could, make it in with one loss or whatever, but every game was so critical. And you could really see who were the best teams at the end because they never lost. I mean, the value of the regular college football game has been totally lost with this, expansion of the playoffs and everything. I'm still a fan of more college football, but I don't know. I'm starting to be to the belief if you're going to have all these teams in for better quality football, you probably need to cut off a game from the schedule or something, maybe a game or two from the regular season. Just have a longer playoffs, right? Get rid of your conference championship games.
Right.
Just go right to the playoffs. You'll just have it be like the NFL, right? Team with the best overall head-to-head. I mean, they have all these tiebreakers in the NFL. You play all these teams head-to-head. Like, you could figure out who has the best conference record, who has the best overall record, and figure out who won the conference. And then you could still have your other rankings to figure out the other team. It's really not that complicated. It's arbitrary enough with how they do it. They could figure out a good solution.
100%. They can make it work. I mean, yeah, like you said, like record, conference, they can make it work. They can make it better. But
you look at college basketball. I mean, I know I know we're talking football, but I'm going to make these compare because you brought up the importance of regular season. College basketball, you look at their schedules, how they're lined up.
Right.
Yeah. Now their non-conference games in most cases mean more than their conference games.
100%.
You look at college football, you're getting Georgia versus UT Martin week 1.
Yeah.
You're getting
Georgia they should stop
State week 2.
I mean, these good teams should stop scheduling, the school of the sick and poor or whatever week 1 or give us some good matchups, right? Figure out who's the best team by going up against the best
Big
team.
Challenge.
Yeah, let's have an SEC Big 10 series, or even, let's see what the new Big 12 is like. Like Big 12 versus Big 10 challenge. Like, show me. I'm not gonna pick an old matchup, but for
example,
we've already seen Utah, Ohio State, but
and for example,
we saw that in the
you're getting Texas,
Rose Bowl.
Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Do something like that. Georgia versus Ohio State.
Well, that's SEC, but like, let's see. I want to see Big 10 versus Big 12 to see how these new conferences match up against each other. Give me something like, I know they normally play in like a Rose Bowl or something, but I don't know.
BYU, Indiana.
No, that is just way too random. I'm sorry.
I was just
Maybe the
thinking,
BYU, yeah, maybe the BYU fans would like that,
BYU,
but
Penn State.
nah, I'm not a
No.
fan of BYU personally.
No, I was just
I
trying
would
to think
say
of
maybe like give me like a matchup we haven't really seen before. Like, what about Baylor and Michigan? Like a
yeah.
team like that, like a team with a good, usually a good offense and a good defense now in Baylor. Michigan, they always have good teams under Harbaugh, so I think that would be a really interesting matchup.
Yeah, it would be.
Or even like a Kansas State versus someone. I mean, pick the draw. I mean, Kansas State had a good team last year. I mean, they probably wouldn't be able to compete with an Ohio State, but like, I mean, maybe Kansas State, Michigan State, something like that. You know, build your brand. You know, more. You know, if you want more recruits, you know, you want better recruits, you want a chance to get into the playoffs. Yeah, losing to Michigan. If you're Kansas State and you're trying to get into the playoffs, yeah, losing to Michigan State, you know, might hurt those chances. But you're also, if you go into Michigan State and you beat Michigan State, you also have a good chance to get into playoffs, and it will make these regular season games matter more, right? I mean, you have, you know, you could say like just for an example. I'm just an example because that's the only one, you know. Sometimes, you know, you get Alabama versus like UL Monroe, you know, something like that. You know, yeah, you know, it's a game. They're motivated to play, but the players and coaches know they're winning 63-0.
Right.
They already know they have an easy win in the bag.
Yeah,
If you
no,
want to
I
make it
agree.
matter, do something bigger.
100%.
Make the regular season matter.
Yeah, make it more exciting to the
Yeah.
fans.
Or even put bowl games week, like, you know, week
Nah,
one, you
I
know,
think they should
or
get rid of
or
bowl
something
games.
like that.
If that's my one hot take, bowl games are literally Cass's money grabs, and they're worthless.
Right. Okay.
That's what the playoffs should be, right? If you want more games, like make all these bowl games into the playoff games. You could still sell all the sponsorships and everything, you know, from the major teams, but they're more important games. And you don't think more people would tune in for a game that actually means like the team's season for a chance to go to the championship? I mean, I watched some of the big bowl games, but like even the Rose Bowl this year, that was right before the infamous Bills game last year, the Bills Bengals game.
Yeah.
But I didn't even really watch much of the Rose Bowl. I was more focused on that Bills playoffs. Or sorry, it wasn't a playoff game, but I was more focused on that Bills Cincy game.
Yeah.
But had that been a meaningful game, had that Rose Bowl been for Utah or Penn State to advance to the semifinals, something like that, I guarantee you way more people are tuning in, and those games have a lot more, you know, relevancy, and they are a lot more important. But switching gears now, let's get into our Final Four prediction, because that's what I think everyone is most excited about. So I guess we'll start off number 4.
Okay.
Number 4. If Paul, you want to go first,
Sure.
and let everyone know who your number 4 is right now.
My number 4 is Florida State. I think they're going to go 11-1. Their only loss will be to Clemson, but I think they'll have a good enough start of their season where the college football committee will say, "Yep, you're in." You could be maybe 5 right into the final week of the season, but they're going to bump you into the college football playoffs because of the schedule that you have, that Florida State has in their September. You just look at their September schedule. I mean, you get Clemson, you also get LSU, and they also have some other big games in their top start of their season. So I think they're going to start strong, they're going to finish strong, and they're going to enter the playoffs.
What about you, Tommy?
At my number 4 team, I got LSU.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I like that.
They're gonna go in with a strong year. They're gonna go in tough, and I think
Can they win the SEC, or are there possibly two? Never mind. I know you shouldn't reveal it. Who's number one? My number 4. Or go ahead. Continue.
I don't have them winning the SEC.
Okay.
So I just got them in as a playoff team.
I like
Ooh,
that. So
that's
Tommy's got
that's
2
interesting.
SEC teams. So
Teams in my top.
I like it. I like it. I mean, it's the best conference, so you're gonna have the best teams naturally.
Yep.
I'm gonna go USC. I like Caleb Williams a lot. I think that they're gonna have one of the best offenses in college football. I think them being in their second year. I know not a lot of people like their defensive coordinator Alex Grinch, but this is going to really be his first year to get in his own recruits to play on that defense. We know Lincoln Riley is going to have one of the best offenses in college football, and Caleb Williams probably has as good as any shot of anyone to repeat as a Heisman Trophy winner, because this may sound like a bold take, but Caleb Williams is like the closest thing I've ever seen to Patrick Mahomes playing football. And I think Caleb Williams was way past where Patrick Mahomes was in college, which is kind of scary, because where Patrick Mahomes was in college, he was really good, but he wasn't as accurate, or he didn't have the anticipation that you see from Caleb Williams. And Caleb Williams makes those same crazy throws that are just almost like, man, this guy just is almost like an alien with some of the plays. So to me, like, I've always been a big Lincoln Riley fan too. So I like what they got going. I got USC at number 4.
Good job. I like it.
All right. The start number 3, I'm going to say Utah. I think Utah can surprise some teams this year. I mean, they have USC on their schedule. They have Oregon on their schedule. I think they also have Washington on their schedule too.
Right.
So you go through.
They are the back-to-back Pac-12 winner. So it's kind of like the same in the AFC East until someone knocks off the reigning champs. I mean, they're still going to be very tough to beat.
Heck yeah.
Very tough to beat. I think they're going to, if they can beat USC in the regular season, if they can beat Oregon, and say if they lose to Washington, I still think they're going to get in. I think they have to be, because they're in the Pac-12, and obviously the Pac-12 at this point, probably to the CFP committee, doesn't matter anymore.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to win at least 11 games for them to get in. I mean, even go undefeated. But I think if they still drop one game and they can get some help somewhere, I think Utah can have a chance to make it, and I think they do make it.
I agree. I like that take, actually, Paul, because I love their coach Whittingham, and obviously they lost Dalton Kincaid, but what's kind of scary is they have another tight end who might be better than Dalton Kincaid coming back, and Brant Geithy, or however you say his name, Geith. They still have Cam Rising, who to me is a dark horse Heisman candidate. What I saw from him last year in that Pac-12 championship game, even the Rose Bowl, that dude is a baller, and I think he could even be a first-round draft pick. Like, don't be surprised if you hear Cam Rising's name called in the top 32 next year. Maybe Miami or the Jets. Well, I know the Jets don't have a draft pick, so they're screwed. But Patriots, maybe the Patriots need to replace Jones. Maybe you hear that name called next year by one of those teams. But I like that pick, Paul. Who do you got at 3, Tommy?
My third team, I got Florida State.
I like that too.
They got one of my favorite players in Johnny Wilson. I think they're gonna have a good year, and I think they win the ACC this year.
Ben got me on the Johnny Wilson train, so I'm ready for him.
Oh yeah, Ben, you did get me hyped on him.
Yeah. Oh man, Johnny Wilson is so fun to watch, and he's looking like a beast in practice. I was watching some clips, and he looks like an offensive tackle. The blocking drills on the sleds. Like, he's just like pushing it over. Like, he's like the wide receiver variation of Darnell Washington, right? Yeah. Just like an absolute freak. Like, I don't know how teams are going to be able to defend him, because you throw him a fade in the back of the end zone. Like, how are you going to be able to get that man? Like, he's so tall, he'll be able to just get up and snag it. And I think it'll be hard to push out just because of how big he is. And he runs so smoothly. So I love that pick, Tommy.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I agree with it wholeheartedly. I think Florida State is going to win the ACC as well. They got a proven quarterback who's efficient and smart. He knows how to get the ball to his playmakers. And not only do they have Johnny Wilson, but they have Keon Coleman coming in from Michigan State, who was their number one wide receiver for the Spartans last year over Jaden Reed, who was drafted by the Packers in the 3rd round this year. So they got 2 NFL caliber wide receivers on top of a Heisman. I think he's top 10 in Heisman odds, but he's one of the Heisman favorites, maybe not the odds-on favorite, but he's in like the one of the top Heisman contenders at quarterback. They have a very good running back in Trey Benson, and they have a transfer tight end from South Carolina who's a beast. They got Jared Verse, who's arguably the best defensive player in all of college football. He'll be a top 5 draft pick this upcoming NFL draft. You can bank on that unless Verse gets hurt. But you've just seen the talent Florida State has been able to put out in the NFL at that position between guys like Brian Burns, DeMarcus Walker. I know he hasn't been as productive as I thought he would be, but he had a decent year for the Titans. We'll see how he does for the Bears. But you got Jermaine Johnson, who is a recent 1st-round pick as well for the Jets. Jared Verse is better than all of those guys, and he is a beast. So they got him on defense. They got Norvell as head coach, and I really like what Mike is building down there. LSU week 1 is going to be a test, but they beat LSU last year on a crazy blocked extra point as time expires. I don't know if you guys remember that game. It was like one of the first games of the year. It was an amazing game. I expect that game to be equally as exciting and thrilling. I just like Florida State more than LSU this year, but they're my number 3 team.
All right.
Florida State LSU. If it wasn't for Alabama Tennessee, how that game ended, Florida State LSU is the game of the year by far.
Oh,
I think that's 100%, game of the year. But number 2 in my CFP rankings is Texas. They're good. They're just good. I mean, we also we have a close friend of ours who loves his Longhorns, and he's got me invested in Texas this year. And I'm just sitting here and I'm just like, maybe I'm too invested in Texas right now. I have them going 11-1. Their only losses to Kansas State, but I just think Texas, if they could put it all together, they can get in.
Yep.
And I do.
You took my number 2. I got Texas as well as my number 2 team. Like you just said, they're a loaded roster. I got them losing the same game, so I think they're gonna do well and get to that number 2 spot.
I really thought about choosing Texas, and it was hard, but I'm just gonna say Michigan again until I see that team decline. I'm not the biggest fan of Harbaugh, but their running back room is stacked between Blake Corum and I forget the other guy's name, but JJ McCarthy is gonna be one of the Heisman favorites, and let's just be honest, there's some type of ingrained bias towards the Big Ten. We know it's the same thing with the SEC. We saw in 2015, it was, I believe, yes, 2015, the inaugural year of the college football playoff, TCU arguably had just as good of a resume as Ohio State, but since they did not have the playoff, the conference playoff game. And I know that the Big 12 has since changed that, but Ohio State got in over TCU that very first year. Mm-hmm. And it seems like Ohio State is always in it. Michigan State, one of those teams. So I'm not as high on Ohio State, but I think Michigan gets in. I think they're my number 2.
That's good. I like it.
All right. Michigan I thought of Michigan. I thought like, where could Michigan end up? But if it ends up being, because they can end up being a two-loss team this year. I mean, you look at their schedule. You get Ohio State, Michigan. That's always a toss-up. I mean, Ohio State's hoping. I think Ohio State wins that game, even though it's in Ann Arbor. So there's one loss there, but then there's a few other games that they could lose. I forget who else is in their schedule. I think Penn State's also in there, so maybe they lose a game there. But I think they're going to get tripped up. And now, as we know, that Harbaugh is missing for 3 games. Maybe they end up losing one of the first 3. Who knows? But at number 1, until they're not number 1 and they can prove otherwise, it's going to be Georgia. I think you look at their team, you look at their schedule. Yeah, they're going through a quarterback change. They're going to have a good defense. Their only holdup is quarterback, but even though they might not have a great quarterback, they're still going to win 12 games, in my opinion, because they're just that good. And you just look at their schedule; it's just like, hand it to them. Here, get in.
That's who I got too, George. Until you beat them, they're the number 1 team in the league. So I got.
Yeah, I got them as well, guys. I'll be honest. But I don't think they'll three-peat. Like that would be very, very impressive if they do. But I don't see them winning. I mean, they will definitely become a dynasty if they win 3 in a row, but they have a different quarterback, losing other pieces on defense. I know they still have Brock Bowers, who is a beast, one of the best players in college football, but I'm going to say one of these other teams, the field, I'm not ready to say who knocks them off yet, whether it's a Texas, who you guys had in there, or a Florida State, who I think we all had in there, Michigan possibly. One of those teams. Tommy, you at LSU.
Yep.
I had USC. I don't know. I'm not ready to say this is the team that knocks them off, but I'm going to say they don't win this year. I think there's another team other than the team in Athens, Georgia, lifting up the trophy at the end of the season.
I like it. And I think there is a good chance that Georgia gets knocked off, and I think
I think it could be in the playoffs. That's my hot take. I think Caleb Williams goes in there, and maybe last year they would have gotten beaten up, but now he's going to be in his senior year. I think he's going to come in there ready, wanting to prove something, that he's the number 1 pick and that he's ready to go into the NFL and duel with Patrick Mahomes. Like,
I'm just going to go out and say,
I think he's ready to make a statement.
I got Texas knocking them off in the championship game.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that pick.
Prediction. I'm going Georgia. I got Texas knocking them off.
What about you, Paul? Does Georgia three-peat?
No, they do not three-peat. We said it last year. It's hard to two-peat, but it's completely hard to three-peat. I mean, look. You look at their schedule. You look at their new quarterback they're bringing in. Yeah. Right? They're playing somewhat. They're most games they're going to win by 30 plus. I say you play 12 games, 7 of those games they're probably winning by 30 plus. So they're going to feel like they can just go into the playoffs. Like I have them facing against Florida State. They're going to just walk into the playoffs, and they're just going to whitewash Florida State. But Florida State is no animal to be playing against, right? I mean, you got Jordan Travis, you've got Johnny Wilson, you've got that of these other weapons at Florida State. You
Coleman,
also have Verse on defense.
Trey Benson.
Right. They're going to have all those. They're going to be facing a Florida State team that they have not seen in the regular season, and I think that's why they lose in the semifinal. It could be any of these teams. I don't know who yet, but I have them against Florida State. If Florida State knocks them off, great. If Utah knocks them off, great. If Texas can knock them off, great. They're just not going to three-peat just because they have not faced that tough opponent that can knock them off. Right. And here it is. They're going to get in, and then they're just going to see it.
Okay.
They beat Ohio State by a field goal last year, even with their NFL ready team.
Yep.
What about Heisman? Who
Heisman.
you guys have winning the Heisman this year?
Okay, I'll let Paul take it first.
Oh, jeez.
Sorry, Paul.
There's so many players. I'm just
Yeah, it's hard.
battling through my brain. Like, I mean, the obvious one is Caleb Williams, but I'm not going obvious. I don't want to take the obvious guy. I'm going to take, in order for a Florida State, a Utah, or a Texas to make it to the playoffs, one of their players have to perform at the elite level as they're going through. Florida State coming out of a conference of the AC that is being dawned upon as complete people that we're just not even focusing on in here. And there's bias here in the CFP. There's bias. You look at the entire committee, it's SEC bias. If you look at its Big Ten bias.
Yep.
Dark horse, I think he's a dark horse, but I think I'm going to go Jordan Travis. In order
I
for
like
Florida
that one.
State to get into the college football playoffs, Jordan Travis has to play out of his mind. And that's why Jordan Travis wins Heisman.
All right. I'm going bold here, and I think Ben's gonna like my pick here. I'm gonna go real bold, but I'm going with my guy Johnny Wilson.
I like that, Tommy. Oh man,
He's gonna have an unbelievable year. I think he's gonna have one of them years that he's
I hate to say it, like he's gonna be a top 10 pick. There's no way a guy like that, like he's Mike Evans 2.0. That's what people were comparing him to last year in college.
Yeah.
And you already seen what Mike Evans can do in the NFL. And if you got a guy who's a little more athletic, it's got 2 inches of height on him, like he's gonna be so tough to stop. I mean, I like where you're thinking there, Tommy, because the easy answer is quarterbacks. But I mean, if there's not a quarterback that stands head and shoulders out from above the rest, and like if Florida State goes on a run, it's gonna be because of Johnny Wilson being such a matchup nightmare.
He could carry the team, you know what I'm saying? He could carry them all the way to the championship if they make it, you know.
Man, I might have to go bolder.
Okay.
I was going to say Williams repeats, which I think I like it. That's probably what my head says is Williams repeats. My heart says, one of those guys from Florida State, being a Florida State fan, but I think there's a beast in college football where we've seen a little bit of it, and it's helped this team be really, really good. And I think he's still there to help them stay in that conversation to defend their crown. I think Brock Bowers could win the Heisman Trophy.
I like that.
He's so important to that Georgia team and so hard to stop. They don't have Darnell Washington there anymore, so they're going to have to rely on Brock Bowers more. But why can't a tight end? And we see how important tight ends are to football now with Travis Kelce and everything. Why can't Brock Bowers win the Heisman Trophy?
Oh, man. I like that pick, Ben. Great pick.
To your point, no tight end has ever won a Heisman.
Wow.
I don't think so. I mean, not in my recollection of a Heisman Trophy. Maybe in 1940 someone did, but I mean,
some research on that. But yeah, so but you just got to look at it. I mean, if Bowers can win the Heisman, he's got to be a lock to be a top 5 pick.
100%. He's got to be. Someone's going to take him in that top 5.
Oh man, I just hope it's not one of our rivals. I hope he goes to a team. I mean, I know Atlanta's not going to take him.
A tight end has never won the Heisman Trophy.
All right, wow. So perfect, good call.
Be Ben's first time if it happens.
That would be something, but I think tight ends have become more important now than they've ever been into the NFL. Like Tyler Dunn has written that book on the tight ends, which I really want to read because I heard it's fantastic. But you've seen how important Gronkowski was to Brady.
Yep.
How important Kelce is to Mahomes, obviously. I mean, the Eagles had Ertz when they won that Super Bowl. There's so many. I mean, almost all of the Super Bowl winners have a top-tier tight end. Like the only one I can really think of that haven't is maybe the Rams. I think they had Tyler Higbee, right? I mean, but he was still pretty good. But I mean, if you look at it, all these recent, I mean, Carolina, when they were really good, they didn't win the Super Bowl, but they had Greg Olsen. Like, Greg Olsen was so important to that Panthers offense and the Cam Newton being who he was. So I think we've seen an evolution of that tight end position, and we kind of saw this draft how important tight ends were to teams. Like, a lot of teams double dipped on tight ends. Like, the Packers drafted 2. Other teams like the Jaguars took one in the second round after signing Evan Engram to an extension. It seems like 12 personnel is a new norm, and these tight ends are becoming a bigger matchup nightmare. And could a tight end be the best player in college football? Why not? Like, I think Brock Bowers has a good case to win it if they go undefeated again and win an SEC championship and he puts up numbers.
That championship game, Ben, he was a monster.
Yeah.
Stop him.
They couldn't stop him. He's going to be the same way in the NFL. He looks like a mix between Gronkowski and Travis Kelce to me.
Yeah, I think so.
Like that's if Travis Kelce and Rob Gronkowski had a baby, it would be Brock Bowers. Like, he's got like the strength and size and blocking of Gronk, but he's got the speed and shiftiness of Kelce. He's going to be so scary once he gets to the NFL level.
Yeah.
Like, man.
I won't go to the NFC just for my brain sake.
Well, I was going to say, like, can we play 13 personnel? No, I'm kidding.
Can we?
Imagine that. Brock Bowers, Kincaid, and Diggs.
Then you have, you just need Davis and Diggs on the outside.
Yep. Oh.
Stop it.
Oh man, the Bills would just go right down the field. Like, every drive would be like the Patriots game last year. The playoffs.
We just might make every team look like a JV squad.
Oh, that would be crazy.
But I mean, college football is starting, so
gotta get excited.
We're excited. I'm excited. You guys have any other hot takes this year besides our Heisman picks, our playoff picks?
Alabama finishes outside of the top 10.
I like it. That's a hot take.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I got hot take. I think Oregon wins the Pac-12.
Oregon wins the Pac. I like it.
My hot take.
I like it with Bo Nix there. They gave teams trouble last year.
Yep.
My final hot take. I think Jimbo Fisher gets fired at the end of the season. I really do. Yeah. I know they're paying him all that money, but he makes all these jackass comments. He has this great recruiting class. He's getting paid so much, and he has a worse winning percentage than Kevin Sumlin, if I'm not mistaken. And he's been there arguably I think he's been there longer at this point, and he's done nothing. Like, Texas A&M really hasn't done anything since Johnny Manziel. And how long has Jimbo Fisher been there? We see where Florida State is, where Jimbo Fisher left that organization. They were down in the dumps. It took a couple of coaches and years for Florida State to get back to being a respectable program, which they are now under Mike Norvell. But you see Jimbo Fisher just making all these stupid remarks, and like, he had to go and hire Bobby Petrino to be the offensive coordinator. And who knows, like, is Bobby Petrino going to call plays, or is it going to be Jimbo Fisher? Because Jimbo Fisher normally likes calling plays. Like, they're paying all that money to those at that NIL class. They were supposed to have the best class. And last year they were struggling to beat teams like UMass at home. So I'm not a believer in Texas A&M in this conference. And once Texas and Oklahoma join, it's going to get even tougher. So if they want to compete in the SEC going forward, they can't do it with Jimbo Fisher.
There we go.
I would agree. If they have a year like they had last year, or I don't know what the record was last year. Just for the sake of it, they go 8-4 this year. That's not what Texas A&M wants to do with Texas and Oklahoma coming into their conference.
Right.
So, I mean, 8-4 would have been solid for them last year. They finished. They last year. Oh my
Tell me they
gosh.
finished lower than 8-4.
Oh, well, they did.
Oh.
5-7 last year. That's what I thought. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. I mean, 8-4 would be respectable, but yeah, like I don't see them being very good.
I don't either. That's a good take.
If they can't be better than 5-7,
I mean,
Jimbo's gone.
I would say, yeah, I'd say he has to win at least 9 games to keep his job.
Yeah.
At least 9. I agree with 8-4 though, Paul. I think that's a good. Probably if he goes 8-4 or less, he's fired.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Any final thoughts?
Let's get ready for some college football. You know.
Yeah. Week 1.
First
I'm gonna
game
be
Saturdays in Dublin. Let's go.
Let's do
Yeah.
it.
I'm gonna be watching. All day Saturday.
Yeah. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. And then Monday, did we confirm our guest yet, Paul, or not yet? We still working on that.
It's not confirmed, but we will still have a guest either which way on next Monday.
And will that guest be from Buffalo Fanatics either way or possibly?
I think we're going to have. I think it's going to be Buffalo Fanatics.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so next week, Buffalo Fanatics will be joining us so we can break down our thoughts on what the 53-man roster will look like. We'll also probably recap next week's this upcoming preseason game against the Bears. Thank God we talked college football though, because that second preseason game had Bills Mafia in a. They were so many overreactions on Twitter. It was crazy. I had a couple opinions, but it was nothing too much. But yeah, it was an interesting couple of days after losing a preseason game. But now we got college football back. We'll be, getting into everything now as we get into swing of things. Football is really here. It's finally football season, it feels like. But Buffalo Basement is on at 7 p.m. on Thursdays, correct? Not 7:30. All right. So make sure everyone is following the Buffalo Basement on Twitter as well, and tune in on Thursday to check out Patrick and Matt's show, The Buffalo Basement. We'll be back next week again to break down the 53-man roster with a special guest. And thank you guys again for watching. This has been the Buffalo Basement.
Always go Bills.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I was thinking Buffalo Basement. This has been the Undercovers cast. We'll cut it there, but as always, go Bills, and thank you for watching.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching. Go Bills.
Thank you, guys.